It's time to talk about bullpens and closers. Which save situations should you invest in, and which should you avoid? Who are the next in line candidates to get your saves? In today's episode, we'll discuss all 30 Major League Baseball teams and give the strategy behind drafting closers. Greg Jewett of Closer Monkey and Reliever Recon joins us on the Beat the Shift podcast next. And welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me as always is Ruvain Guy. What's up, Ruvain?
I'm doing great. How you doing today?
Well, I'm a little bit hoarse, and I didn't even do any live auctions yet. You know, sometimes in the middle of draft season, I get hoarse after a bunch of auctions in a row, but I didn't even start yet, and I'm still not very hoarse, but a little hoarse. How are you?
I'm good. Are you cheering for the Mets in their spring training, or are you waiting to save your voice for when it really counts?
Oh, no. You wait for when it really counts. I watched the first game of spring training. That was exciting, but not too much cheering. I have not attended any games, and I didn't go to any Islander games recently, as they've been off for a while for that hockey, four nations hockey tournament. Did you see any of that?
I saw a little bit, and I'm actually going to my first hockey game on Sunday. This Sunday, a Ranger game. The first time I've ever gone to a game since Mark Messier was still playing. So that's how long I've been
Wow.
to a hockey game. So my son wanted to go, and before baseball season starts, he said he wants to go to one game, then he wants to go to like 15 baseball games in different cities. So we'll get to that.
Very cool. Yeah, I attended, I think, every single Saturday night Islander game, home game this year, but one. And actually, they won every single game but one at home. We went to a lot of wins this year. Saturday was the Islanders' best day of the year, so that worked out for the Cohen family.
Well, just bring that luck to the Mets during the season. That's all.
That's what we're going to try to do. All right, well, we've got a great show today. He's been on before from Reliever Recon and Closer Monkey. He also writes for The Athletic. Greg Jewett. What's going on, Greg?
Not too much. Just listen to you guys talk, and you guys should know my son used to play a lot of hockey, so you're right up my alley with all that stuff.
Yeah, wish I rooted for a little bit better team, but we were good back in the
Me
80s
too.
when I was like two.
Me too. Yeah.
All right, but it's our reliever episode. Greg is an expert in the relief pitcher situations. He studies this and monitors this very, very closely. So we're going to really pick his brain about a lot of situations, but of course we're going to start with some strategy. And let's just throw it out to you really, really generally to start, Greg. What do you see in this year's closer landscape?
I think it will be. It's almost like every time we think we get comfortable, then something shifts on us. But the teams that have their set closer make us feel pretty stable. There's a few situations that are up in the air, which happens every single year. What we really want to watch this year closely is how teams like Kansas City and a few others evolve, if they're really going to truly go by matchup. Is Tanner Scott going to what defines the brunt of saves for the season? So there's a couple of nuances within it, but the strata at the top of when you look at the NFBC ADP, excuse me, I've been calling them the Seven Samurai. There's been like the same seven relievers that are kind of in one tier by themselves, and then everything else kind of sets in line behind them with movement within them. But it's been a pretty clear mark. Those seven guys are going early in the draft, so if you want one of them, you kind of know what freight you have to pay, and all the other stuff we'll cover in a moment.
In no particular order, it's Clase, Hader, Mason Miller, Helsley, Edwin Diaz, Raisel Iglesias, Devin Williams. That's it, right?
If you said seven, yes.
I said seven, yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's them. Yes,
Okay.
Helsley somehow. I mean, in every draft room, they're going to go in a different order, depending on what people prefer. But yeah, it's pretty much Clase to Helsley, and then things kind of reset.
Right. Okay. Anything you noticed, Ruvain?
Yeah, that a lot of the teams that have these committees, there's one guy who has like experience and another guy who has good stuff, and it's always kind of a challenge to try to figure out who's going to get the job where, especially during draft season, especially this early, still early in spring training, not knowing who's going to win the job or anything like that. So it's always a challenge to try to figure out who to pick, and you can't be wrong either way because if you get the guy who gets the saves or get the guy with the good, 'cause with the good ERA and WHIP, it's not it's a good consolation prize.
Yeah, I've noticed that there aren't many darts or sort of at the back end of the draft, like, oh, I don't know, is it going to be this guy? Is it going to be that guy? Let's bid on somebody. There aren't that many. The only two that really come to mind are Chapman versus Liam Hendricks and the Marlins situation, Fauché, Tinoco. Maybe you can take a guess. But then there's situations like the Rockies or the White Sox, and we're like, who the heck cares? So I think that this year, at least from my perspective, if you definitely need to get one of those, I'm not going to say 7, but definitely a top 10 closer, because there's just no darts at the bottom, and you don't want to be fishing for saves on the waiver wire because that's just a bad use of capital over and over again on the waiver wire to get more than one closer, right? You can at most get one, so you got to lock down the one, and there isn't much of a price difference between like a Yohan Duran and Felix Bautista and a Raisel Iglesias, Ryan Helsley. So you might as well just pay up for the Helsley and go one round extra just to be in the in the circle of trust of the Samurai 7, as you say. Do you agree?
Myself, I think everyone has their comfort level with closers, but yes, if you don't want to be playing the fab game or trying to guess on who's getting the save this week for this team, then yes, you there's a price to pay for security, and it also shows itself when I break down the relievers' performance by ADP in their 5-round pockets. I mean, obviously the first 5 rounds in main events last year, the relievers had the best WHIP. The funny thing was the third pocket last year actually did very well. It's just a matter, but that's an outlier. That's not something you can rely on every year. But the don't pay for saves crowd is going to be disappointed because there's a lot of speculation in all those rounds where they prefer to start dipping their toes in the water.
And I think getting the top one of those really, it's even top 10 guys if you want to get a job for sure. I think the ideal thing is to leave a draft with 2 total closers. You get one of those guys who has a job, and then 2 maybes who are possibilities that you hope they hit, because you're not going to pay that much for those 2 maybes, and at the same point, you may end up with 3 full-time closers on your roster.
Does it pay at all, or is this a viable strategy to tap 2 of those top 10 closers to get, like, let's say, you get an Edwin Diaz and a Raisel Iglesias? Just saying that's what I did in TGFBI, so I'm asking you if I did a good job.
Well, I know you know how to fill in the counting stats that you're going to need when you do something like that, but I don't know that it's necessary, but it can be done. It's just a matter of again, your comfortability in the build. But again, now you're not going to have to worry, because now you can start taking either one of those pitchers' backup people later in the draft, or you can just take like a late round flyer that we'll talk about later. There are some people that could be worthwhile stashes or flyers that you can get out in the 300 range, and we'll identify a couple of them. But I think not you're set. So, but don't overkill it. Like if somebody's falling, don't just grab them because you think it's a great value. At that point, you need to be filling all the other spots in your roster.
Yep, and we'll get to all those guys at the end that you might want to think about. But actually, that's what I did. Raisel Iglesias fell to like the 6th round, and I'm like,
that's
at this point, I'll play a different strategy. I'll get the 2 lockdown closers, and you know what? I just will forget about any closer darts forever. I'll just get a bunch more starters and more hitting, and set it and forget it with the 2, because I was handed that in the draft. It's not like I planned to do it, but sometimes in a draft you got to take what you get. Very different than an auction. Auction, you can plan a little bit better as to what pockets are. You're not going to get that kind of discount. A 1-round discount or a 2-round discount is a lot.
But aren't you concerned you're losing value elsewhere in the draft? I mean, your offense is going to be a little bit lacking if you're getting guys. It's like if you double tap, doing the 6th and 7th round or 5th and 6th round, whatever it is, you're losing a lot of offensive value there, and it's kind of hard to make up later on. Like I'm already a couple rounds ahead of you in TGFBI, and I only have one closer, but I just couldn't turn down those offensive guys because if you see go down farther down, you're not gonna. It's very harder to make up those stats. I think later on, while closer, you can take those half guys who have half a job right now because you never know they may turn into something, and you're paying less. You're paying less of a premium for closers.
It's all about opportunity cost, and it's all what you're handed in the draft. Is sometimes the opportunity, the value presents itself, and you do it. If you've done your valuation correctly, you should be somewhat indifferent between a position or not. Now, if it's the same dollar amount, I'm going to take if I have a closer, I'm not going to take a closer. But when you have a $6-7 value that's presented, you say, I'll get an offensive guy. The offense will be a little bit less, but now I'm going to bulk up on the saves and a different kind of strategy. So it's all about doing that. I'm going to throw a couple of questions at you, and Ruvain too. Just looking for a very quick answer, maybe a small explanation. It's a who'd you rather. You ready? Would you rather target a bullpen by committee on a decent team, or would you rather target a closer on a bad team? Which is better?
Well, if I'm only taking one person in the committee, I'm okay doing that. Like if you're taking the person you think is going to be preferred save share, but I mean, I think we all want clarity. So I mean, Kyle Finnegan wasn't on a very good team last year, and his ratios aren't perfect, but he still had 95% of the national saves. So I mean, I lean towards I'll take a closer on a bad team as long as I know it's his role and he's not going to completely harpoon me, rather than I'd rather do that than be in a situation where I have a guy in, he doesn't get the saves, and then the next week I bench him, and then it's his turn in that committee to get him, and I not only did I lose out the week before, I'm losing out the week that I'm in because I'm angry about the week before.
Ruvain?
I actually prefer the handcuff. I like to have the two relievers on a good team because not only are you going to get some saves, but you may vulture some wins. You're not going to get as many wins out of those bullpen guys. I mean, you may from the worst teams like the Nationals or I mean, how many games are the White Sox are going to win this year? How many games are the Marlins going to win this year? I mean, they are going to win some games. They are going to be in some close games. And when are they going to deploy their closer? Because they're not going to be in that many games. So are they going to deploy them only in save situations? Are they going to put them in tie games? You may get more saves out of the bad or wins out of the bad closer teams, but I still think you get better ratios in general if you get the handcuff. If you let's say you want to get the handcuff and you mentioned Kansas City, if you want Estevez and you want Ursig, that's not a pretty bad handcuff to be able to get both of those guys, and to get both those guys, it's not going to cost you that much either, and they're on a decent team. They're going to win a lot of games. They're going to be in a lot of close games. The pitching staff there is pretty good. So in a situation like that, I prefer maybe the handcuff as opposed to just the one bad team closer.
Well, Ruvain, what if it's one person? What if I say you can take anyone you want, but one guy on the committee only?
Then I want the guy with the best skills. And not necessarily the closer who's now, but the guy with the best skills, because in that way you'll still have the good ERA, the good whip, the possibility of pitching in high leverage situations. You get the occasional save. You get more of a chance of wins, and I think I'd still go with that because, I mean, would you prefer, let's say you, let's go to a different situation. Let's say you have the Texas situation. You don't want Chris Martin, but let's say you have Robert Garcia because you think he's going to be the guy and you think he has better skills. Would you rather have him or would you rather have Justin Anderson of the White Sox?
So I'm going to give you a little bit of a cop-out answer, but it depends, right? There's a line. We're not touching the White Sox. We're not touching the Rockies, right? There's a line. Would I rather take a shot at a Texas guy versus pick Ursig or something like that, or who knows? In a deeper league, if I just had to give you one answer, I would say take the saves guy, I said the Texas Rangers, but we don't have a lockdown guy on that. I think Kyle Finnegan's maybe a better example. I'd rather have Finnegan than Ursig because I want the saves. In a shallower league, I'd rather take the skills because there's going to be more closers available on the wire. I'd rather take a guy who has some save share and have the skills. Next question. Would you rather, Greg, we'll ask you first, would you rather take a closer on a bad team or a very good middle reliever on a good team?
If I'm playing in a saves league, I'm taking the closer. I mean, again, it's all the old six one way, half a dozen the other, and I totally understand everything that Ruvain's saving, but it's just if I need those saves at that point, and again, it's all of this is always context dependent because you were hinting at that in your response. There's more than one layer than a straight line ranking. It's like, what does my team need at that point? If I need the ratios, then sure, I'll take the middle reliever with the skills like an Urseg or a Griffin Jacks or someone like that. And then if they fall into the full time role, then I'm playing with house money. But if I got caught on the wrong end of both of the closer runs in my draft and I need those saves, then I'm taking the Finnegan or I'm taking the closer that I think will get the bulk of the saves, even though his ratios are slightly risky. Hopefully, I have enough starting pitching if I've let closers drift to that point that I can absorb that. It's just, again, there's always more than one way to solve that Rubik's Cube.
So I'm not asking about like a Griffin Jacks, Ruvain. I'm asking like a Brian Abreu. Would you take the middle reliever, a very good skills middle reliever, the old Andrew Miller type, if that makes sense, or do you take the Finnegan type?
I'm taking the Finnegan here because you still need the counting stats. It's still a category. The middle reliever on a good team, you could and a good middle reliever, you could still get not just in the draft. You can get it later on because every year there are a couple middle relievers that come out of quote unquote out of nowhere, and they're lights out, and you can pick them up during the season. So you don't necessarily need to do that. During the draft. During the draft, you want to have those counting stats. You don't want to have to play the waiver wire week 1, week 2, week 3 of the season. You want to have at least, let's say, get the closer for the Diamondbacks, just to have him because he is the closer opening day, and if you have him, you're going to get those saves as opposed to getting a high quality arm. You can get that during the season. I think you should spend your draft capital on the saves because that is a counting category.
All right, Greg. Do you have a middle reliever? We're talking a non-frontline closer, not a guy supposedly in the mix, that you think might break out this year for saves or even for really increased skills.
Well, I mean, when you say that, I'm removing like Edwin Uceda from this conversation because I think he already had his breakout. I think a guy that could take the next step this year is Kurt Green on Philadelphia. I think he had a very good second half, and I think they brought in Hoffman just as a bridge so they wouldn't put the pressure on him right on opening day having to close games, and I know they run their floating closer concept anyways. He's someone that I think could really take that next step forward. Slayton had a very good year last year. He could end up in the second half getting into save situations, although Whitlock is always involved there if he's healthy. As far as guys that are like way, way off the radar, again, you always stay with the Rays. Mason Montgomery throws heat. He's left-handed. I think this is one of those things. They always set things up. So, like, if Clevenger starts to struggle or they want to flip him and add something for a run for the postseason, they've got Montgomery will be groomed and ready to go by probably a month into the season to replace him in that high-leverage left-handed role. And he could give you a bunch of strikeouts. So those are a few names that I'm tracking. There's more, but I don't want to give away the whole story here. But those are a couple of guys that I really think are poised to take those next steps. And I have like way off the radar guys, but I don't want to bore all the listeners.
All right, I'm going to go to closer situations around the league. There's going to be some closer situations that it's going to be like, yep, he's the guy. That's it. Done. And then there's going to be some discussion on some, and some are going to say, don't pick any of them, throw them away. So we're going to go through varying speed around the league. Before we do that, though, are there any guys who aren't signed by a team that you might be interested in? The two names I'd say that come to mind are David Robertson and Craig Kimbrell. Are those guys going to find themselves on a team? I can so see Robertson going to like Texas or something like that.
Well, the hard thing with Texas is they're really hamstrung by the cap. They said they don't want to get into the CTE threshold. So what Robertson would command in salary, they wouldn't be able to cover unless they shed salary. They'd have to trade somebody to create room to sign them. So I think that's the sticking point. And I think the unique thing about Robertson is he's his own agent. So he's kind of, I think, just waiting for the best situation to present itself, where he can make the most money and be probably on a good team. Not that Texas is not going to be attracted to be a good team, but I think he'd be happy setting up somewhere, not necessarily being the closer. So I think he's just waiting for an injury or something to happen. I'm surprised Atlanta hasn't gotten in on him, but they picked up Hector Neris as an NRI, so there's a very good chance he'll be on the opening day roster, and work his way into leverage situations as a setup reliever. So the field's kind of narrowing for him, so I think he needs to do something sooner rather than later. Kimbrel, I think his insistence on things that he's done, and even the Orioles really couldn't help him once he hit the wall. It just kind of fell off the rails with the velocity. So I'm not sure where he could end up.
End of an era for Craig Kimbrel. That's
Yes.
quite a story here. He been around for a while as one of the top closers. All right, let's go to Baltimore in the AL East. Question here is, will Felix Bautista be back in form, be in form right away? And if you are to pick a backup, which backup option would you pick? I was in a DC earlier, and I didn't get Bautista, but I picked up Kittredge, Sir Anthony Dominguez, and Yanier Cano, just for the hell of it, to get that whole backup situation. I didn't know what was going on. What's your take?
Well, we have no definitive answer about Kittredge's knee. It's a very weird, for all of the physicals that the Orioles catch flack for, I'm amazed that this knee from Kittredge wasn't flagged. There's no timetable for him, which is odd. Dominguez has been giving up a home run every appearance this spring, which isn't a warm fuzzy, but maybe he's working on something new. We don't know about that, but he did okay as the closer. And like when Batista won't be pitching, I know they prefer Yanier Cano as like the leverage or like the stopper. So he could be the 7th, 8th, or 9th, depending on how the batting order lineup pockets kind of present themselves. But of those three right now, I still kind of lean towards Cano just because Dominguez's home run problems worry me. As far as Felix goes, I think he looked very good in his first appearance. Didn't really show any signs of rust. I know that he's not going to air it out fully, so I think we're not going to really look at the velocity as the end-all, be-all. The fact that he was healthy and throwing the splitter, I think, was a great sign. The team has said they're going to ease him into things. We don't know what that means. I just think he probably won't do back-to-backs like the first month, but once they know he's healthy and bouncing back and responding well, they'll probably take the training wheels off in May, and I think he'll go back. I just think they're going to limit his multi-inning outings, which makes sense.
So if there is a back-to-back in sometime in April, you think it's going to be Cano right now, as the guy?
For me, yes. I don't have any firm, and if it's a left-handed thing, it might be Keegan Aiken. He did very well last year in the second half, so he'll be a factor in those late inning decisions too. Because when they don't use a set closer, Hyde likes to play matchups. That's the hardest thing about saying it's hard to say it's one guy. Because they're more matchup based when it's not the mountain.
All right, let's go to Boston. I mentioned this before, but there's Hendricks and his health, and they've also signed Aroldis Chapman. The question is, how's the save situation going to break out? Should we be rostering any of them? I've got ATC showing Hendricks for 17 saves projected, Chapman for 12, Justin Slayton for 5. Ruvain, just very quick, what is the check on the health of Hendricks?
They're easing him back in. He hasn't pitched in the game in what seems like forever. They're going to ease him back in. And the fact that he hasn't pitched in any innings in the last year plus, they are going to be very careful with him. I think it's in this situation, they're going to probably go 50-50 to start and just to ease, just like easing Batista back in, they're going to try to ease Liam Hendricks back in. The thing is, the Red Sox do want to be competitive, so they're probably going to try to push him faster, sooner. So, the question is me when that's going to be. But with Aroldis Chapman, I mean, his walks for 9 last year was 5.69, which is crazy. But so far this spring, in almost 3 innings, he's only walked one batter, so that's good. But I'm more intrigued with Justin Slayton. He throws 96. He had a K rate of 9.6 last year. He's interesting, and if Chapman walks the ballpark and Hendricks is not 100% there, I think he may be the guy. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, the team likes the team likes Slayton a lot. As a Rule 5 pick last year, he did very very well. Um, yeah, I think they want Hendricks to be able to do it, and they signed Chapman in case he can't. And you hit it right on the head. And the good news is Chapman showed up to camp. He's in better shape. I guess he changed his diet. I mean, I'm not going to do the best shape of his life thing, but he does look leaner when you see him in his outings. Um, so that might help him, but it won't help him throw strikes. So, the second half last year, he had a really, really hot streak. It kind of shrouds some of the things he did in the first half because people remember the 9 September saves and not looking at his rolling graph of the walk percentage. So, I think you know what you're going to get if you roster Chapman. You're just hoping he gets you the save numbers that was quoted, and he doesn't harpoon your ratios with a couple of meltdowns. But they'll give Hendricks looks early if they can. I do think we need to see the velo tick up. And again, I know these guys aren't going to go full tilt in spring. A lot of relievers are sitting 2 miles per hour below their normal just because they're not going to go full tilt right at the get go. So, take all of those velocity readings with a grain of salt. Like even Hader today was sitting 2 miles below his average. I mean, it's just they're not going to go all
So is
out.
Diaz.
Same thing. Yep, I was looking at the Statcast before I came on. So everyone kind of is copying what Helsley did last year. He didn't go all out at the beginning because he wanted to have that velocity when the season began, when the lights go green. So monitor all of those things. But I agree. So they're going to try and let Hendricks do it, but if he can't, then it's going to end up being Chapman and Slayton. And again, you might see Garrett Whitlock get a couple of like multi-inning saves and things of that nature. Or if they don't want him to do multi-innings, he can end up being in the mix as well.
All right, the Yankees, it's Devin Williams, but what I'm more interested in, Greg, is are you in the best shape of your life?
I'm all right for 55. Not
That's all.
the shape of my life, but
We'll leave it at that. You're not closing any games this year, right? No, I don't think so.
hey, I am doing that learn to skate hockey, so that's a hard workout.
Nice. But there's nothing to talk about with the Yankees, right? That's it.
No, it's Devin Williams, and you hope the back holds up. I think people are very quick to forget that this guy had stress fractures in his back last year. I mean, I'm not willing to say he's going to come out and throw 65 innings this year. I don't know. It would be nice. That's what the Yankees want. But I think just putting that in ink is a little risky.
Okay, so next up, Tampa. Peter Fairbanks, he never seems to be healthy. There's also Edwin Uceda. I've got ATC has 23 saves for Fairbanks projected, 10 for Uceda. I mean, he can't fall in the circle of trust. He's not nowhere near the Samurai 7, but is he at least in the is it the dojo? Is that what you call the samurai training sessions? Dojo?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. He's been consistent back-to-back seasons of 45.1 innings, so that's good. Okay. But there's always going to be outings like he had today in spring where he just can't find the strike zone, and you watch him and you're like, oh my lord. He walked 4 guys today, and there was games last year where he did the same thing. One of them preceded him going on to the IL, so we don't want to wish any bad luck to Mr. Fairbanks. If he's in your circle of trust as 40-ish innings with 20 saves, then you're going to get exactly what you planned on.
I'm not touching him.
I'm saying if you're playing on anything more than that, I think it's fool's gold. There's so many live arms in that bullpen that they don't have to be patient with him. Plus, he has a contract stimulator that like an extension at the end of the year, like an option. And Tampa Bay likes inexpensive, and then he'll get a lot more expensive next year. So last year they didn't trade him at the deadline. I think this year, if he's healthy, they'll be moving him.
So then if he moves him, then it means he's probably not going to save elsewhere, I don't think.
I
So
think
yeah,
he would end up being a setup man on a contender. That's correct.
I'd so
So
much rather have Kyle Finnegan than Fairbanks this year. You agree?
yes,
Right. All right, Blue Jay situation. Um, Now I've had people say that this is not a top tier closer, but Jeff Hoffman is being paid some money to be there, and there's a couple of options. There's Yimi Garcia, Chad Green. I have them all projected for like a half dozen saves. Even Eric Swanson a couple. But Jeff Hoffman, I've been drafting as like the best of the tier two closers.
hmm
Like I think he's the man. He's gonna get it. Young guy, good skills, and he's just gonna flourish. And the Blue Jays are a team that they like having that one guy. I, I don't
hmm
know. I'm high on him than the market. Do you agree?
I do actually. I had the same conversation with a couple of people the other day on the panel for the BBHQ event over the weekend. And I was the high guy on Hoffman. The other people were a little more skeptical than I
They all
was. But
suck.
you know what's funny? No, but
I'm
what's
kidding.
funny
I'm
is
kidding.
is like we sit there and look at his skills from the last 2 years and like, man, what would this guy do if he was the closer? Well, now we're gonna find out. So hopefully it
Yeah.
translates. But and he wants to be the closer, so this is kind of cool. I think that's why he didn't go back to Philadelphia because he didn't want to be stuck in the highest leverage reliever role. He wanted to have a chance to close games. So, he did this to his advantage, and I am hoping that everything holds up. But yeah, I have him projected for I think 26 or 28 saves when I just did my last update at Reliever Recon. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm all in on him. Jimmy Garcia is very, very good in his role of taking on the toughest lineup pocket in the seventh or eighth inning, and that even makes Hoffman's life easier, to be quite frank.
But both of them also, Garcia and Chad Green, both struggled when they had to actually be the closer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go by history alone, they're better off in the seventh and eighth inning,
Yep.
and Jeff Hoffman's more set up to be the closer. So it's a sort of almost a set role there. You know what you're going to get from those three guys. So why not draft Jeff Hoffman as a number one closer of the second tier?
Yeah, and Jimmy ended last year on the injured list. So I mean, he's another person. I mean, I don't know how much we're going to get out of Garcia. He looks great this spring, and he looked great in the first half last year. And then I think he only pitched 8 or 10 innings in the second half last year after he got traded to Seattle. He was a non-factor. So, you know, monitor that closely. But yes, both of those guys are much better suited as setup relievers than the guy. So
Is it Jimmy Garcia or Yimmy?
it's Jimmy.
It is Jimmy. Oh man.
Yeah, even though it's a Y, you pronounce that as a J.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad we
It's okay.
clarified that.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is we're gonna go to the AL Central now. How long does it take to travel to work for you, Ruvain?
It takes about an hour typically.
So how many miles is that, by the way?
It's 30 miles.
I don't think I would touch the White Sox bullpen if it was if it was like right in front of me, less 30 miles. Like I'm staying far, far away. I'm putting several marathons between me and picking. And if you see me picking a guy, not in a DC, but in a regular league, if you see me picking up a White Sox, please call 911. You probably know it's either I'm sick or maybe I've been kidnapped and somebody pressed the button for me.
Unless they give you back Fab if you pick up a guy, out of pity.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm trying to characterize this situation in a Rob Silver type way, where we just this kind of verbiage of are you crazy? But the top guy projected by ATC is Justin Anderson with 8 saves. Do you have any differing advice, Greg? Then don't even bother.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, I would avoid this situation as well. Poor Prelander Baroa, he's already out hurt. They are talking about using Clevenger as a possible closing option. He doesn't have the velocity upside like Kopech did. He may have a little bit better command when you narrow his pitches. And we might be able to get something out of him there. I think his best value would be in like a head-to-head where you could use him as a starting pitcher in a reliever slot, just on like days where you need somebody to fill in and you're just hoping to get you a save in your matchup. But other than that, I at this moment, We don't see anything viable. The good news is Jordan Leisure did look decent the other day, but I don't think he's ready. And they've got, if they unleash one of these other guys, like their Rule 5 pick Shane Smith is actually interesting. I mean, he lights up the radar gun. If they decide they're not going to try and use him as a starter or a long reliever, he could be very interesting in one inning outings. And there's other guys in the minors that they might convert from a starter to a reliever. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces with the White Sox, but as you said, just stay away.
I think we're spending too much time in the White Sox here. Anyways,
Yes.
Cleveland. Is Emmanuel Clase your number one reliever, period?
Well, as of today, yes. I mean, it's hard to go against a guy that has 3 consecutive 40 save seasons. Now, am I concerned about the usage patterns and,
And the strikeouts are pretty
the
low.
playoffs
actually.
last year? Right. So, I mean, am I going to pay full freight for him in a draft? No. I mean, I'm going to rank him number 1 because that's where he's being picked, and that's where my projections have him. But Josh Hader's very close because of the strikeout differential that you just referenced.
Yeah, it's nothing else to say about that. He is the man. I don't think there's unless ATC found someone who looks significant, and you may want to roster another middle reliever there. But I mean, Clase is the guy, and unless something, God forbid, happens, he is the man, and he should be one of the top 5 relievers end of the season.
The only thing I'd say is that Cade Smith actually comes up in ATC as a very interesting reliever.
He's
Projecting for
talented.
67 innings, 87 strikeouts, sub-3 ERA. Just looks like a very viable pitcher. I mean, he struck out 103 batters last year. And if anything happens to Class A, to me, it's Cade Smith in a heartbeat. And even if not, he's like a good ratio guy. So although I probably wouldn't pick him in a standard depth, even like a 15-team league, I mean, in a mono league, Cade Smith is really, really interesting, and I'd monitor him see what he's doing. If he starts with the same strikeout rate this year, just for weeks where I don't want to play my 6-7 starter, Cade
Right.
Smith is really interesting. You agree?
Yes.
Would he be closer anywhere else?
Lots of teams.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah, he's very, very good. So, Cleveland's they have, and actually they have like good young relievers on the way up too. They got Andrew Walters, they've got Franco Ailman. I mean, there's a bunch of guys, in their arm barn that are very, very intriguing. That if they want to trade from some of that wealth moving forward, they can, and that could even include Clase if they really wanted to. But we'll see how all that goes. He's another one. His contract starts to escalate not this year, but I believe the next couple of years it moves up from where it is to a couple of million more a year. So that might make him more viable as a trade candidate, if not this year, at the trade deadline next year, if they decided that they want to save money and move another direction.
Similar with what Milwaukee did with Josh Hader, and they were just plugged in Devin Williams. Same idea, correct?
Right. Yep, exactly.
So it's interesting. So Detroit, which was a playoff team last year, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking this is a possible area or a possible team to get some interesting saves here, because I don't quite know that it's certain, or at least the drafting crowd doesn't have any certainty. It's all being spread around. Jason Foley might be the top guy, but Tyler Holton, good pitcher. He might be the multi-inning, high-leverage guy. Is this a buying opportunity to say, Foley's only projected for 17 saves. He's going like dirt cheap, but he's the closer, and it's a decent team. So, or they're going to play close games. So, buying opportunity, or do you think this is a committee situation?
I think it's a committee, and I'm probably going to avoid. The funny thing is they spent all winter saying they wanted to add relievers with swing and miss stuff, and they signed John Brebbia and Tommy Conley. So I'm not sure what they were really doing, but I mean, Canley does get a lot of whiffs with his changeup, but he's a one-trick pony. I mean, he threw, I forget how many consecutive in the postseason. It was 30 plus, but I don't know. It's going to be funny, and it's almost like Bizarro World. At some point, Alex Lang's going to come back, and if he's throwing strikes, I wouldn't be really surprised at all if he ends up leading the team in saves from the point he gets called up till the end of the season. And it makes me feel weird saying that, but it's quite possible.
And what's Tyler Holton's role? Because he got multiple inning saves last year, and then toward the last couple weeks of the season, when you wanted to get him saves and you had him on your roster, they used him as an opener. Do you know
Yep.
what's going to be his role? Is he going to be a high
He doesn't
leverage
have a
guy?
role. They just he can do whatever they want, and that's his value to the team. He's like in a league that tracks WAR. He's fantastic, but there's not many of those that do that for us. So he's a very good pitcher, and he accumulates a bunch of statistics, whether it's ancillary wins, ancillary saves, and he helps your ratios. But yeah, you if you think you're going to predict how he's used, then it's just too much. With AJ Hinch is very very hard to predict.
Kansas City, we have Carlos Estevez, Lucas Ursak. Ursak looked great in the second half of last year. ATC doesn't know exactly what to do with the situation. It's 20 saves projection for Estevez and 14 for Urseg. If you're in a DC league, you're going to take Estevez. You're going to draft Urseg as the handcuff. But in a 12-team league, let's say, are you buying any of these, both one or the other, praying that Urseg gets the job? What are you doing here?
In a 12 team, it would have been Urseg, but once they signed Estevez, it just clouded that picture too much for me for that size. So I would avoid unless I absolutely had to have the saves. I'm close to you. I had 22 for Estevez and 12 for Urseg, but the one
So two
thing
more
here
for
that's
Estevez. You basically
the-
took ATC
yeah.
and transferred 2 saves, I see.
well, actually, I do my own, but yes.
I'm joking.
I know. But all I'm gonna say about Estevez is he has been limited with a back issue, so we're just watching that. So there's a chance if you buy the dip on Urseg, you might get maybe the first 2 weeks to the month of the season of him as the closer, and then you can kind of figure it out after that.
Yeah, Estevez actually had a bullpen today. They said it was his quote best bullpen so far, whatever that means. I'm serious. That's
I had
exactly
my best.
I
the
get
other
it.
day.
It's fine. I mean, at least he's throwing, so that's a positive. So I mean, Robert Garcia made his first appearance today in a game. So I mean, guys are starting to surface. So that's good. You know, there's been it's still been very quiet about Trevor McGill, but we'll cover that later.
Okay, Johan Duran, Griffin Jax. I feel like Jax is another one of these excellent middle relievers with saves upside here, so maybe even a good guy to have. But Duran has been, he throws hard, and I mean, is there any reason to doubt that Duran is the guy? Is there any reason to, you got to back him up with Jax?
Well, I mean, Duran had very bad BABIP. As good of BABIP luck as Clase had last year, Duran was on the opposite end of it. He had like no BABIP. Everything that went out there landed. So I think the oblique affected him last year. I really want to know what his velo is on the opening day. He's saying that he's not going full tilt, and I tend to believe him. It's just a matter of what he's really going to throw at, because there's discernible splits when he throws above and below 100. 101, and I had those on the site. So if he's throwing over 101 when the games go live, then yes, we're good to go. But we don't have that information.
But he's not, and he's not in the Samurai 7 for you.
Well, he's not in that ADP. I would be okay taking him, but I felt much more comfortable in my tout sold draft. My first reliever I took was Griffin Jax, because when it's save plus holds, I don't have to worry about who's closing. I'm worried about skills.
Okay, athletics to the West now. Mason Miller is obviously the man, and I think the only thing to talk about is, do you worry about a trade or not? I actually think not.
I don't think so either.
No, so it's just him and draft away and set it and forget it, right? Done. Houston.
As long as his elbow holds up, yes.
As long as,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
true. Houston, it's Josh Hader. Definitely, they're paying him to be it. I think that's it. I've mentioned Brian Abreu as a very good middle reliever. I guess for solds, Brian Abreu would be excellent, but otherwise, no.
Yeah, him and Jax are both in my top 10s for sold. So, I mean, that just,
Right.
it changes the game, because then those guys get treated as the really good reliever that they are.
So my question on the Angels is, why in the world did the Angels sign Kenley Jansen when Ben Joyce was just fireballing it and doing great? And since they signed Jansen, obviously he's going to be the man. But I have him, I guess ATC has him as not holding up or getting off days or whatever. As I have Jansen projected for 20 saves and Ben Joyce for 12. Do you agree with that assessment? And is there any reason to draft Joyce and Is there any reason to draft Jansen, or is just like a third tier option now?
I have no issue with taking Jansen. I mean, he is what he is. He's going to get you about 25 to 30 saves. His whip doesn't kill you. He just doesn't rack up strikeouts. I mean, for where he's going in drafts, I have no issue with him being my RP2. I'm okay with it. And the thing with Joyce is, yes, he throws really, really hard, but it's straight. So guys, when they start to time it, they put the ball into play against him. It's not. I'd really like to see his swing and miss stuff improve, and I think they signed Jansen to help groom Joyce. And Joyce has never shown the ability to stay healthy, and he doesn't work well on back-to-back days. Last year he appeared on consecutive days 4 times. So I mean, he with the way he throws and the violence of everything, he needs time to recover. He never threw back-to-back days in college. He only did it very limited in the minors. So I think they want Jansen there to kind of teach him how to do all those things. So moving forward, that Joyce can reach his potential. I think it was very smart by the Angels to do this, to be quite frank. I don't think Joyce was ready to close full time.
But I'm nervous about having Jansen there because he's 37. Last year, he had the least amount of saves. He had 27 saves last year, least amount since 2012. Yeah, the team he was on wasn't as good, but his K rate was down. And the fact that he's getting older, the pitch clock has been affecting him out in maybe a small way, but it's affecting him. And the fact that he's getting older, it's not gonna get much better. So I'm a little bit nervous with that situation. Plus, the Angels are not supposed to be that great of a team to begin with. So you put it all together, I think this is maybe a situation you may want to stay away from.
Yeah,
Okay.
everyone's entitled to their opinion. That AL West is a roll of the dice unless the Mariners figure out that they should actually invest in their offense and make a run. Justin Turner was right.
And just for the record, me, Ariel Cohen, I don't take off back-to-back days. I've sometimes pitched full 7 or 9 inning games on 4 consecutive days,
and you're over 30. And you're over 37. Right?
And I'm in my 40s. I'm over 37. Yeah, that's true.
But you're not throwing 105.
No, I'm not throwing 105, but I am in the best shape of my life.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Perfect.
There you go.
Seattle, I'm always nervous about taking Munoz. I got burned by him in multiple years in a row, and maybe it's just because I got burned, but I just don't think he has the health to make it through the whole season. Great skills, but I just worry, so I'm not confident with taking him as my number 1 closer. And that's another reason why I'm trying to get one of the other guys. I don't want to be in that situation to pick him. But are you confident that Munoz is the guy, and can we draft him with no hesitation?
Yes, I actually like the kick change. I think that's going to be very interesting, especially if he can be effective with that against lefties.
Okay, Texas, Chris Martin. He's old. Maybe he's the guy, but Robert Garcia is probably looming and will ease in it when he's healthy. Is that pretty much the plan for you?
For now, I've always been a Emiliano Teatro guy. We just don't know what they're going to do with him as far as his role. But if Martin gets injured or that bullpen implodes, I think that they will fast track him since he's on the 40-man roster. Him and Mark Church are going to be pitching leverage innings at some point this year. I still prefer Teatro's stuff over Church, but that's just me.
To the National League, Atlanta, Raisel Iglesias. He's in the Samurai 7. And are we done with talking about the Braves?
I think so. I mean, but now the nice thing is too, he's pitching for a contract, his last one.
Well, hold on a second. For the Braves, or the second guy, they always seem to trade for a reliever sometime during the course of the season. That's their MO, and they're going to get somebody. You mentioned about maybe why they haven't even thought about getting David Robertson, but Pierce Johnson, he used to close for the Rockies. I don't love him. I don't love his stuff. He seems to give up hits in the big spots. I like Aaron Bummer. He was actually pretty good when he was with the White Sox before I think he got injured a little bit. But I think he would be the second guy in case Iglesias can't do back-to-backs or something like, or the Braves want to, they want to ease with Iglesias in the beginning of the season because they want to save him for the end of the season. So, Aaron Bummer may be a good option in that bullpen also, I think.
Yeah, but remember, I mentioned Hector Neris earlier. They signed him to an NRI, and he got rave reviews in his off-field session with Grant Holmes today. I think Neris will end up displacing Pierce Johnson, to be honest with you.
But remember, it's Hector Neris.
I know it is, but
Yeah. So,
the Braves
but
have
I
very
mean,
good voodoo. Look what they did with Joe Jimenez.
that's true. That's true.
Miami. Okay, now, first of all, this may not be a situation you even want to go in because Miami's not a good team. And we don't even know the story. I'm not sure. I think I heard. Oh my goodness, what's the name of the?
McCullough did Coach Speak 101.
Yeah,
It could be Fauché, it could be Tinoco, and Bender's even look good too. So we'll see how it happens.
yeah. By the way, did you know that Anthony Bender is Howard Bender's cousin?
Yes,
Yeah, no, he's not.
I know.
I tried to get
But
you.
Anthony
Can't
Bender
get you,
was
Greg.
Anthony Bender was on this podcast before, so he has that going for him.
He was never on the podcast.
Anthony Bender, we had him.
We
Oh,
we
sorry, we had Anthony Bass. Wrong Anthony. I apologize.
Are you on a Bender?
No, not yet.
Just teasing.
So what are we doing here? Are we drafting anybody? I mean, Fauché has been taken in even 12-team leagues.
Nah, I don't know. I saw another site kind of hyping up Fauché, and I don't know. I don't see it. Too much traffic on the bases for me. Not enough swing and miss stuff. This is gonna sound crazy, but I really think Bender's gonna end up leading this team in saves this year. Like last year, everybody wanted it to be Bender, but he was just coming back from his surgery. Now he's a year removed from it. He looked very. I mean, again, it's spring training, and we take it with a grain of salt. But he's looked very, very good, and I believe he retired aside today with strikeouts. So, I think we're spending all this time fighting over Fauché and Tinoco, and then we're gonna get surprised by Bender.
Well, you've heard it here on the Beat the Shift podcast. Anthony Bender, that's a guy to get if you're in a very, very deep league or
Correct.
in a draft and hold. Okay, the Mets. I'm going to let Ruvain go first on this one. What's the story in New York?
It's Edwin Diaz or bust, literally, because when he was out, it really affected their whole season. He pitched already. He pitched today. I think today was his first game. His velocity was down. He gave up a couple of runs. Again, just like Greg said, don't worry about it. He's going to slowly build up. He's already getting to know how to quote unquote pitch, not just to throw, but he's learning how to pitch, and I think that's a good thing. But they also have Ryan Stanek, who they used very liberally during the playoffs, and they have a lot of trust in him, and he would be I think the next high leverage guy in that bullpen.
Not Minter?
Not Minter's coming off of the hip injury. They're going to probably ease him in. Plus, he's also a lefty. I know Minter has always been the second guy in Atlanta, but he is still coming off of an injury. He had surgery for his hip. I think they're going to ease him back in. Toward the end of the season, he can be the number 2 guy. But to start the season, I think they're going to lean more on Stanek for the 8th inning as opposed to Minter.
Yeah, I agree. Philadelphia, this is a tough situation. First of all, Ruvain, what is the story with Jordan Romano's health?
I think he's okay. I mean, I don't see any reason why not. He didn't, he had the surgery, so he should be okay. But he is coming back from the surgery, so there's a lot of options in that bullpen. So Romano, he has a history of getting a lot of saves, but having a nice healthy ERA, a nice healthy WHIP, which doesn't help your ratios. So having the other guys in the bullpen like Kerkering, like Greg, you mentioned Kerkering, Matt Stram, he's been very good. Jose Alvarado, all those guys can get saves in the very beginning of the season just because they may want to ease Romano in.
Okay, according to the ATC projections, Greg, which Philadelphia reliever do you think ATC has valued as the most valuable in a 5x5 setting?
The most valuable?
That's right.
As in, like, we're talking like WAR and all the other stuff?
Auction value, counting saves, ERA, WHIP in an auction value setting.
ATC, I'll guess Strom.
Strom, that's right. Strom. I mean, that strikeout rate is ridiculous, and he pitches those innings.
He does. I think what hurts him is that they usually bring him in like in the 6th or the 7th to kind of get 4 outs or take on a tough left-handed lineup pocket. So if you're not taking Romano, I think Alvarado and Kerkering are the guys that if you think Romano can't handle it, those are the 2 that will probably start sharing saves if they remove him from the preferred save share.
I haven't bought a single Philly in the closer in the bullpen at all
Yeah.
this draft season. Are you?
No, I can totally understand that,
Yeah.
especially when, you know, Hinch is frustrating, so is Thompson.
Right.
Yep.
Washington. It's Finnegan once again. I mean, Washington's not a good team, but I mean Finnegan's probably good for 25 saves, something like that.
I would think so. And if he does better this year, you would like to think the team would learn from last year and actually trade him at the trade deadline instead of having like a huge. They asked for like the moon last year instead of just getting anything for him instead of a $2 million discount.
Yeah.
Made no sense to me.
Interesting. On to the Central, and before we talk about the Cubs, time for the Injury Gurus trivia of the week.
Okay, so this is going to be based on the Cubs' situation in the bullpen, so that gets a little bit of a hint. But of all the current closers, not including Clay Holmes, who is a starter now, not including relievers who are not on the team like David Robinson, which closers have the most blown saves over the last 2 years? Top 3.
Well,
Any
It has to be a closer, not just a
Closer blown
of
saves.
the last 2 years, even though Clase was very good last year, he had 12 blown saves the year before.
Yes. Clase was number 1 with 15 blown saves over the last 2 years, but he's also had the most saves over the last 2 years,
Yeah, oh
with
yeah.
91.
He's just an opportunity hog.
Yes. So who are the other top 2?
Wow. I'm drawing a complete blank.
Well, number 3, we just mentioned Kyle Finnegan. He blew 13 saves over the last 2 seasons, but he also saved 66 games. Now, when we talk about the Cubs, Ryan Presley was number 2 on that list with 14
Well, I would have
blown
guessed
saves
that, but that was obvious. But
Right,
over
yeah.
the last over the last 2 seasons, but he's also saved 35 games. Now, the issue with Ryan Presley is that he can't really seem to stay healthy. But if you put those blown saves into perspective, over the last 2 years, those 3 players have more blown saves than Craig Kimbrell did, Camilo Doval, Aroldis Chapman, Paul Sewald, all those guys who lost their jobs, but they still have their jobs, and they even got new jobs wherever they are. So, the question is, how many lives will the Cubs give Ryan Presley, or will Presley break down, and you got Hodges as the closer? What do you think, Greg?
This is a multi-layered question, and actually, he's going to be the next player profile I do at Reliever Recon. I read a really nice article saying that he worked in the off season on his mechanics because he felt like that was contributing to some of his injury issues. He was trying to clean some things up. His first outing wasn't pretty, but his last 2 outings this spring have been very good, which is strange because he likes to work on the backfields. Like when he was with Houston, there was a couple years, remember, everybody was panicking. Like, oh my God, is Presley going to open the season? And where is he? Because he was always just working on the backfields because he just wanted to do his own thing. He's a veteran, and he knows how to dial it in. And on the flip side, he has the most saves of any reliever in the postseason that's active right now. So we can do the old 6 one way, half a dozen the other. He waived his no trade clause because he wanted to be the guy. So I know the Cubs are saying that they're not going to name a closer, but I would think 70% of the time it's going to be Ryan Presley. And we're a year removed from when before they signed Hader last season, he was going in the top 75 picks in draft champions. So I mean, he's not perfect, and I get it. Your point's well made, but I think he's good enough that he can get you to 25 saves this year without nuking your ratios. And he's pitching for a contract. You can say what it is, but these guys are going to give you their best, and I think he'll be able to navigate that. And his experience will help that bullpen and guys like Hodge get better for the future.
And is this a handcuff situation possibly to get both of those guys?
You can, but I mean, I was one of the low men on the totem pole, even in the preseason. If your compadre here was reading my articles on Recon, I was very hesitant to give glowing reports on Hodges. I worry about the walk rate. I worry about a little bit of migration to the mean. I think there might be some growing pains this year for him, but that's okay. That's part of the learning curve when you're becoming a leverage reliever. So he did very good last year. I just think we can't ignore that that 11% walk rate that he has, and not coming to roost a little bit. So again, I think this is good because it gives the Cubs time for Hodge to learn on the fly, and then he might be ready to go next year. And we'll see how all that goes. But I'm fairly confident with health that Presley can give you the 25 saves I was saying with, I'm not going to say his whip's going to go back to his glory days, but over the last 3 years, it's still pretty solid.
Yeah, I would draft him without hesitation as a lower end reliever, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnati, I am not touching Alexis Diaz at all. I think he's going to blow up. I think that he's just going to be pulled at some point. I don't know who's next. I have hints that it's maybe Tony Santillan. I have another hint that it may be Emilio Pagan. I don't know. Maybe you can clarify it, but I'm not drafting Alexis Diaz. I'm consciously and purposely not touching that situation.
All right. Well, who's Terry Francona probably most familiar with in that bullpen?
Is it Pagan?
No. He used to pitch for the Royals against him. Long hair, non-roster invitee, throwing 98 miles per hour again. Scott Barlow.
Scott Barlow's on the team?
Yeah, he's a non-roster invitee. He's hitting 98 on the radar, and he's another person that worked on mechanics and other things in the offseason. Now, this doesn't mean that Scott Barlow is going to be healthy or he's going to solve some of the issues he had, but he's also somebody that has been a closer and has experience, and also probably has some of the trust from Terry Francona that other relievers may not. I do like Tony Santillan. He's always just had just a litany, and Ravane can speak to this litany of injury issues. So it kind of puts a red flag next to him. Like, I was big on Santillan until they signed Barlow, and that kind of makes me interested in Barlow, especially since, there's no such thing as free, but, he's going past 6'6", past pick 600
I did not
in
even
most
realize
DCs.
he was signed.
Yeah.
And I also mispronounced Tony Santillan's name. So
It's
I'm
okay.
really doing
I have to
poorly
watch
on the
all these
Cincinnati
guys.
bullpen.
I have to watch all these people, so that's how I pick it up.
I know.
Yeah, and the Reds bullpen have a history of their high velocity arms getting injured. It for some reason it just works out that way, where everyone gets a lot of hype in that bullpen, and then all of a sudden something happens, and you don't see them for like a year and a half or 2 years, something like that.
All right, so because you talked about 0 seconds about Alexis Diaz, I think you agree with me that just don't draft, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid him. I mean,
Right.
even if you get the saves that you want out of him, he's just a guy like Fernando Rodney and Colomé that wreak havoc on your
In
on
the
your
bad
ratio
year.
stats.
In the bad
Yeah.
year, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he had a good year. All right, Milwaukee. I think Ravane. The question is Trevor Miguel healthy? Otherwise, I think they're gonna give it to him. And then maybe you guys can comment on who's the next guy up. I always liked Joe Piamps. I saw him actually with Ravane. We went to a game together. We saw him in person. He looked electric.
Yes, we did. Yeah, Trevor Miguel. When we saw not Trevor Miguel, Piamps. When we saw him, he had electric stuff. But remember, Abner Uribe was the guy who was the man until he had a whole bunch of multiple things going on. So Trevor Miguel, he actually made his spring debut last Friday. So he is pitching. He is okay. The injury wasn't really, it was a little bit shady. I'm not 100% certain what it was, because they really, as of a couple of days ago, they really didn't say what it was. But he was pitching, and he's back, so I don't see why he can't be the leading candidate to be the closer there. But Piamps can have the stuff if he's able to keep his whip down. He can have the stuff to to be the closer there as well.
I don't want to be the wet blanket here, but I'm Team Uribe. I just think the talent will win out. He learned how to speak English. He's committed. Last year was humbling to him. I just think, and again, he's going to be risky at times because he does lose command. But I think he has the best fastball in that bullpen, and I think a sleeper in leagues that play solds or holds is later in the year. Craig Yoho, he has a changeup very similar to Devin Williams. I think you're going to see a lot of turnover in this bullpen as the season goes. So as high as I was on Trevor McGill last year, I'm on the opposite. I'm not really targeting him in any of my drafts, and he's never done 50 innings in a season.
All right, good stuff here. Pittsburgh. David Bednar for years had been really solid and the man, and last year not the man. Didn't look great. Is he going to rebound? Was this injury related, Greg? Any reason not to draft Bednar? I mean, this could be a steal here. I mean, he used to be a top closer, and could he be again until he's traded finally, of course?
I don't know. He's a hometown guy. I think of anybody that's probably active in the majors now that Joey Votto's retired. If I could have a beer with somebody, it'd be Bednar. I think he'd be a riot. Anyways, we can put on Carhartts, go to the local bar, but I think Bednar will be fine. And soft tissue injuries, the oblique things, has always kind of affected him. I would just as long as he's healthy, I think you can get back to a 30 save season. He's not perfect, but he's pretty good.
Does it matter that the manager said in end of February that they don't want to name a closer yet? I mean, does that bother you?
You think he's going to put out Dennis Santana, Colin Holderman?
Well, Colin Holderman had a sort of a breakout season last year. He was very good. Is he closer good? Probably not. But
Yeah.
the fact that he didn't name Bednar as the closer, that's not alarming in any way.
I think he's trying to motivate him.
Okay.
St. Louis situation, I think, is really easy. It's Ryan Helsley, and I'm pretty confident in drafting him. I own him in a couple leagues. No reason to think otherwise. I mean, who else is there? Jojo Romero? I mean, that's it.
Well, I mean, the Cardinals have to trade him, right? Unless they're going to extend him. They either need to extend him or they need to trade him. I mean,
but if they trade him, is he going to close where they trade him?
I would imagine.
Yes.
Right. So he's probably going to be worth potentially more.
Yeah, I have no issue with his price point or what you're going to get out of him this year. I'm intrigued by Ryan Fernandez in the second half, if and when they do trade him. He's been looking pretty good. He did well last year. We want that whip to go down. We got to get it below 1.3. But I think there's enough strikeout and stuff there. And actually, Romero's looked very good this spring too. But I think he's more of a left-handed matchup guy. I don't see him being able to handle safe situations against good right-handed batters.
Okay, now here comes a very interesting situation, and I think it's a good one to pay attention to because Arizona should be a good team. I've heard different people say Justin Martinez is the guy, or he's at least given the first shot. I've had people say it's going to be A.J. Puck. And then I've actually heard people say, actually, it's Kevin Ginkel. You all are wrong. I guess there could also be a closer committee, but in any case, they're going to win a lot of games, so they're going to have a lot of meaningful saves. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts, Greg, on what is the situation and how would you play it in fantasy?
Well, my thoughts don't matter is Torey Lovullo. I lean Martinez just because of what he did in the second half and the velocity upside. Ginkel's a very good pitcher, but he opened last year as the closer when Sewald was on the injured list. And when Sewald was removed from the closer job, they didn't elevate Ginkel back into that role. So for me to say, Ginkel's facing better hitters this spring, so he's going to be the right-handed closer, I don't know. But we're all just shooting darts right now. I lean Martinez, but that's just how I lean. It's up to Torey Lovullo, and I hope he makes a good decision. Puck is very good. I just think they prefer him as the left-handed guy. So if Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman are coming up in the seventh inning, it's going to be Puck. I mean, if they come up in the ninth inning, it's going to be Puck. But I think that's an isolated situation with an in-division rival. I just think they see Puck as the highest leverage reliever, and I think they have realized that they can probably get another level out of Martinez in the ninth inning.
And what's your save split? ATC is showing 20 for Martinez, 12 Puck, 6 Ginkel.
Very similar. I think I was 21, 11, and 4.
And you're not copying ATC when you're doing your things?
No. I think ATC's copying me, to be quite frank. No.
maybe you're both peaking. That may be it also.
Well,
no, I run my own, and then I don't even look at when I get the projections from Fangraphs. I don't look at the saves. I only look at the ratio stuff. I do my own saves and holds for every team.
I'm joking, of course, but actually, I'm
I
actually
know.
happy. I'm happy to hear it, and because it's confirmation bias, right? You're coming up with something
Correct.
similar, so great, and that and obviously, if ATC thinks it's this, it means most projections think it's this, so we're all in
Right.
agreement. All right, Colorado, not a great situation. Seth Halverson throws 185 miles an hour, but his whip is 1.89. I'm exaggerating on both, but you get the point. But it could be Tyler Kinley also. He'll get some kind of save share, maybe. I don't think I'm
Vodnik has the
rostering.
highest whip.
I'm sorry.
I say Vodnik has a higher whip than Halverson.
Yeah. This is not a good situation. Not a good
No.
team. I'm staying far away. Are you as well, Greg? And if you had to pick one, is it going to be Halverson to own only because maybe there's if you're in a mono league, I don't know, maybe there's an upside with that fastball?
Yeah, I prefer to avoid the situation. If I had to pick one, it would be Seth Halverson. We saw what Vodnik could do last year as the closer. His whip kept going up and up and up as the season went on. But the Rockies, hopefully their bullpen's going to be a little better this year. They have a lot more velocity. They've got good young arms coming through. Jaden Hill's actually starting to look very good in his spring outings. Zach Agnos is young, but he's got an electric arm. There's a couple of good young lefties coming up through the system too. They actually do have decent bullpen options. It's just pitching in Coors stinks, and no reliever in Coors is just going to have a unicorn season like Daniel Bard did anytime soon. It's just we want to get the best that we can. But if Halverson was my RP3 and I could stream him in and out based on matchups, like play him on the road and not at home, that might be the ideal way to do it.
Anything to add, Ruvain?
Yeah, how many close games are the Rockies going to play anyway? It's yeah, they
They
may
actually
be
play a bunch of close games, as weird as that is. But a lot of them, it's like they were down 6 and then score 5. But yeah,
exactly. They'll score 5 in the bottom of the ninth inning, which doesn't do you any good. It's like the other situation you mentioned with Miami and with Chicago. You have to be in a position to get saves and to begin with, and if these teams are not going to be good to begin with, it's not really worth your while to spend draft capital on these guys who are not going to really get you anything that's positive.
All right, for the Dodgers, I'm going to tell you the ATC saves, then I'm going to do my analysis, and I'll throw it to you, Greg. Tanner Scott, projected for 21 saves. Kirby Yates, 12. Blake Trinan, 6. Michael Kopech, 5. Evan Phillips, 4. Alex Vesia, 1. Brewstar Gratterall, 1. I even have Craig Kimbrell with 1 and Ariel Cohen with 1. So everybody's getting a save. I have 50 projected saves for the Dodgers. Now, they did save 50 games last year. Here's my take. They are paying Tanner Scott $72 million. I have never seen a team pay a guy $72 million to be a relief pitcher and not be the closer. That's my analysis. He's the guy. Now, are we going to have some situations where maybe tough righties and maybe get Yates in, or, Trina's going well for the week, sure, and Kopech's going well for the week, sure. I can see that. But they pay him $72 million. He's going to be the primary guy. And by the way, let's say he only gets 60% of the save situations. If there's 50 saves to spread around, that's 30 saves. And the ratios are great. I have full confidence drafting him as a low number 1 type closer. That's my analysis. What do you think, Greg?
yeah, there's nothing off base in anything that you said. The hardest thing I think they were willing to pay him $72 million just so he couldn't embarrass Shohei Ohtani anymore in the playoffs. But all that being said, they're paying him the money. He's going to be the primary save share. He had today was the most un-Tanner-like outing ever. He threw 8 pitches and had 8 strikes. So the Dodgers magic is already working. So if they get him to rein in his command, holy moly.
But these are also the relievers, the middle relievers that you can possibly draft toward the 28th, 29th, 30th round, because they will have a chance to get saves, because there just will be so many, because Tanner Scott's not going to pitch 3 days in a row. So, Trinan will be in there, other Yates will be in there, so they will vulture saves, they will vulture wins, because even if they're put in for the 8th inning, let's say, then if the Dodgers behind, they just, they have an explosive lineup where they can just catch up in the ninth inning. So any of these guys, I think, are better possible middle relievers as opposed to drafting a guy in Colorado or Miami or the White Sox. I think these guys have more to give to you than the other players.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can draft him as a number one closer, and you're paying like eighth or ninth round price for him. And if you want to double up on closers, take Helsley and take Scott, and you've got two really good ones. I mean, there's just such a percentage of save chance that he's going to get, and the Dodgers save so many, and he's just good. There's no reason not to draft him. I mean, he's been a solid $12 value player, even on the Marlins and even on wherever he split time last year. For the last couple of years, that he's just a value everywhere he goes. So I'm high on him. I've heard people say, "Well, I don't know. It's Kirby Yates. Yates had such a good year. $72 million. I don't see why that's not the reason. To me, that's well, $72 million. Yeah, but they wanted him. No, it's a lot of money to pay a guy just to be a middle reliever. So
they signed Yates as insurance for Kopech and Phillips, who were injured at the time. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, but Scott's the guy. It's clear as day to me. San Diego. I'm not drafting Robert Suarez. I don't know. He was great last year, but I don't think he's going to make it all year. And they do have a good cast of characters to support him. Jason Adam can come in right away and be the closer. I mean, you can have Yuki Matsui being a guy. Jeremiah Estrada's looked pretty good. It's actually a pretty good bullpen. So I'm personally not touching that situation. But maybe Jason Adam is like a Solds guy.
Yeah, Jason Adams, great as a Solds guy, and as Ruvain was saying, I'd rather have Jason Adam after pick 300 than Seth Halverson.
Exactly.
Totally.
Because at some point, San Diego's either going to shed the $10 million salary of Suarez, or he's going to lose his grip on the role. He did have a better outing yesterday, but his outing the other day, where he threw 21 pitches and 8 strikes, was not great. And I just don't think you can get away throwing your fastball 70% of the time. Major league hitters are going to figure all this out. His second half last year was not pretty. His ratios really rose. People were figuring it out. It's so weird because, like I was saying in our group chat at Reliever Recon, last year I was like the high man on McGill and Suarez, and now this year I'm the low man. I am not in on either, really. I could be totally wrong, but like you, I don't want him on any of my rosters.
Yeah, and is Jason Adam worth taking? Like, if you're in an NFBC main event, is he worth taking like in the bench round?
Yes.
Okay.
And even Jeremiah
Estrada, because then you're not blowing
Estrada,
fab on him.
even Jeremiah Estrada, at the beginning of last year, the first 3 months of last year, he was almost unhittable. So they have other options, and if they want to be competitive at all, the Dodgers. If he starts to falter, if Suarez starts to falter, he will be pulled pretty quickly.
Oh, and to just to give you the, Adrian Morejon is ahead of Yuki Matsui in the leverage ladder.
Right.
He's not going to be a starter. They're keeping him in relief, so Matsui's kind of buried in the lower. He's not going to get a bunch of saves at all.
Final situation is San Francisco Giants. ATC is actually showing it's split between Walker and Doval. I've got 24 saves for Walker and 9 for Doval. That could be an artifact of him getting all those saves the other year, maybe not. Maybe it's roll. Maybe it's partial. What's your take on San Francisco? Is Ryan Walker just going to walk away with it? Obviously, he's the guy to get between the two, but is he going to walk away with it? Or, Ruben and I in an auction championship, we took Doval as a last pick. What the hell? Did we do the right thing, or are we fully confident in Walker? What say you?
I'm at 28-5 favoring Walker. But Melvin already confirmed Walker as his closer. However, and there's always a caveat, there is a separate article with a quote saying that they really miss Walker's ability to come in at any point of the game and take out the best part of a lineup. So that could open the door for a few more Doval ancillary saves. I think we just have to kind of wait and see how this all plays out. I mean, Walker's very, very good, and he proved it when he took over last year. It's just a matter of how that bullpen evolves throughout the season. I mean, we're only we're 1 year removed from Duvall being an all-star closer and tied with Bednar for the National League lead in saves. So we can't forget about that. And if they're not going to use Duvall as a closer, then you might as well trade him and get something for him. There's going to be teams that would be interested in him at the trade deadline if he's putting up good stats and he's not closing.
Yeah, that's yeah. Although Duvall can probably sneak a couple in early on, just to see,
Well, yeah,
to
no,
maybe to bring up
I'm
his
saying he
trade
can
value
beat
a little bit,
Yeah, he can beat the 5 that I was saying. That's why I'm saying if Melvin's saying out loud that he misses Walker's ability to go in whenever he needs him the most, there might be a couple of games he does that, especially when they're playing the Dodgers and some other teams. So, we
Right.
can't overreact, but at the same token, if you have Duvall in your lineup and he picks up a couple of extra ancillary saves, you're not going to complain.
All right, well, we've made it through the entire Major League Baseball teams and situations. Greg, anything left out or any other player worth mentioning that we didn't cover at all?
I'll have all kinds of stuff. Like next week, I have to do like a tiers for the Athletic, and they want me to include some sleepers. So I'll get a lot of that out there. And I do the stuff every day on Recon and Closer Monkey. We'll start firing up content this weekend. So it's all coming down the pike. I think we covered most of the relievers. There's no one really that way out on the periphery. There are people I like, and we'll start unearthing them. But the in-season stuff is really where it's at. We find out where their leverage roles are, who's doing what, and how those new pitches really come into the arsenals and round out a stuff for relievers. So good stuff. You guys did well.
Thank you, and you too. And you mentioned Fab. You definitely have to be on the pulse really quickly on the relieving situations during the year to know who to pick up. And check out Reliever Recon and Closer Monkey. That is both of Greg Jewett's ventures there. Really great stuff. You can subscribe. Well, why don't you tell the audience how they can follow all your stuff?
All of my all right. So on the old Twitter machine and actually at Blue Sky, it's both at GJewett9 are my handles. So everything else you can find it on there. Reliever Recon is only $5 a month, and it pays for itself easily. Even if you just use it for the Fab articles we do every Sunday in preparation for the NFBC runs at 10 o'clock at night. We have all kinds of content. There's player profiles, bullpen buzz. We have a guy that works in the regular season who does streaming relievers for wins, like the first guy out of the bullpen, vulture saves. We cover everything with that. Closer Monkey does as much as we can with everything that's going on. I update the bullpen hierarchies daily. I keep tabs on all those things, and we send out emails to subscribers, and we also have premium subs there. And at The Athletic, I have a weekly article. Today published the top 75 solds. Next week I'll have the updated closer tiers, and we'll include a little bit of a sleeper section, and then everything else just keeps coming. And then my lineup article even starts coming up soon. Brent Hershey reached out for Baseball HQ, so I try and stay as busy as you guys, but man, it's tough.
Yeah, quite a lot of stuff going on, and tis the season there. So, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving your time and helping us understand all the situations and how to act on it as fantasy. So thank you. Ruvain, what about you? Why don't you tell the audience about your stuff?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at MLB Injury Guru, where I tweet out injury updates as they come. Also, I have an article, Rotoballer, discussing all these injury updates and next player up. And by popular demand, I was actually asked to start my article this coming week. So my first article will be coming out this coming week to help you with your drafts.
Check that out. I'm Ariel Cohen, and I apologize again for my slightly hoarse voice. Hopefully it's not too terrible, and we made it through the show. But again, I'm Ariel Cohen. I'm over at Fangraphs, over at Rotoballer, on Twitter at ATCNY. ATC projections are up all over the place at Fangraphs, Rotoballer, RotoWire, and at Yahoo Sports. And, of course, you can listen every week to the now award-winning Beat the Shift podcast right here on this channel. Once again, thank you so much to Greg Jewett for coming on the show. And from all of us here at Beat the Shift, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.